Thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Liz Scher Dueling. I'll be helping out with this presentation. I'm the livestock specialist for Ohio State, and I help out with DUNFs and QA and things related to State Fair. Also joining me today is going to be Michael Swinesberg from Paulding County. This is kind of his brainchild. And then Cindy Bodie from ODA is also going to join us today to talk about some things related to online DUNFs. So to talk a little bit about how today is going to go, we're going to go into the background of DUNFs real quick, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. I'm going to show you what the online DUNFs look like, and then we'll talk about things like pulling reports, what's customizable, and then we have 3 different counties on that are going to talk about their experiences. So before we get started, if everybody could make sure that their microphones are on mute, just so I'm not talking over background noise. And this is, again, going to be recorded, so we'll share this with the Ohio Fair Managers Association and those that couldn't join us today. All right, so just a quick background. DUNFs are required for the exhibition of market beef, dairy steers, market swine, market sheep, goats, market poultry, lactating dairy animals, including goats and veal calves. And where we get a lot of questions with DUNFs are the optional for market rabbit and feeder calves, that we do encourage you, if you have a terminal sale for those animals, to go ahead and collect DUNFs on those animals. They're just not required to be sent to Cindy at ODA. Cindy, do you have anything you want to share related to DUNFs and this year, just general information?
Not really, not at this point in time. Like I said, we're really pushing the electronic ones. So when you get to that, we can talk more about it, but that's pretty much it for now.
Okay. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is switch our screen share, and I want to show you guys kind of what the electronic DUNFs look like. There we go. Too many screens open. There we go. All right. Can everybody see this okay?
Yeah, it looks good, Liz.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. So I'm going to ignore some validation here, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So this is what your youth will see, or your parents will see, when they go to look at the online DUNFs. Your county name will be here along with your county ID number, your 2-digit code. So just explaining that if the fair number and county fair name here is not the fair they're participating in, to please stop and to contact their 4-H educator or fair for the correct link for the county. It requires all this information, so the first and last name, the street address, city, state, zip code, email, and phone number, as well as the current age of the exhibitor. And all of those are forced, so they can't progress in the survey unless they fill those out. We also have them list the animal ID number, tag, tattoo, leg band, or ID chip, reminding them not to put the name of their animal as an identifier. A nice thing that went with this survey is that we can explain some of these categories a little bit more if we need to, with some reminders and things, and not have to fit it all on one page. And I don't know about anybody else, but when I would collect these and look at them over at the fair, I appreciate typed names and addresses and phone numbers, because reading some people's handwriting is insane. It also asks them to select the species of your animal. So here I want to just talk about real quick. Fairs organize their species and their DUNF sometimes a little bit different, sometimes based on their classes. So the species of the animals is customizable by the county fair. So we would basically, if you're interested in customizing this a little bit, we would set up a meeting with you to discuss, what things that you want listed here to make it easier to organize on your end for pulling reports. The next thing is describing the animal, so the breed, sex, and your animal's color. We did have a request by a fair this year to limit the characters that youth can type in this. Apparently someone wrote a small book about every single mark on their animal. So we are going to put a character limit in this year, so we don't get too crazy and you guys don't have to read through that on an Excel spreadsheet that you pull for a report. And again, all these responses are forced as well. So then it asks if they've completed quality assurance. If they click yes, we go on to the next question. If they click no, those that have been selected, so the junior fair coordinator, the extension educator, or other committee members, will get a notification that someone selected no. It'll kind of flag that particular report and they'll get an email. So you guys will get notifications. So that's kind of nice that you don't have to necessarily sort through all these DUNFs. It's going to automatically flag that. If they answer no, they have to kind of give you a short explanation as to why they didn't complete QA. And again, that email kind of triggers to have you guys check back with them as well. Is the above animal listed free of medication? If they click yes, we go right to the end where they can sign. If they click no, they have to list how many medications were given. So for example, if I put 2 in here, they'll have 2 chances to list the treatment date, the condition being treated, the name of the medication, the amount, route, withdrawal time, and what date that withdrawal time will be complete. If they click that this was not an extra label or prescription drug, that's all they have to do. So for example, if I click no here, it'll go on to that second drug that I selected that was given. If I click that the second drug was a prescription, it asks for the veterinarian information. So first and last name, full address, and this is kind of nice, the phone number of the veterinarian, so you guys can contact them if there are any questions or problems. And then at the end there, it has the exhibitor owner signature. Based on the age of the exhibitor, there'll also be a parent signature required. And then at the end, they will get an email that's sent to them that has a synopsis of all of their answers on this survey for their records. And if you require them to show you guys that they completed it, that option as well. And then something that was asked this year is that we add a link, that same link. So if they have multiple animals at the end of the survey, they can just click on that link and start a new DNF form for the next animal. So that'll be customized because each of you guys will have your own unique link that kids will use to fill out DUNF forms. So that is what the electronic form looks like. Again, the species are really the only thing that we can customize on there outside your fair name and that customizable link. We want the DUNFs to stay the same, across the fairs, just like our paper forms. And then we're going to talk a little bit about pulling reports, but does anybody have any questions so far before I know that was a lot of information quickly.
So this is Betty. My question is, we traditionally collect these when they come across the scales at the fair. And that's when we put in the tag number. So kids can't do this ahead of time unless they know their tag number, correct?
Correct. And so we'll talk about a couple different ways you can go about doing that to help ease the burden of going over the scales and filling out DUNF forms here in a minute. So Betty, I promise I'm going to come back to your question.
Okay.
In the columns for breed, sex, and color, do they have to fill all 3 of those out before it allows them to move on and completing the form?
Let me see here.
Yes, it should require them to complete all 3 of them. Those were questions that were on the paper copy of the DUNF form that had to be filled out. So we made sure that it was something that had to be filled out on this form as well.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Pam Burns from Claremont County. If we did this last year, is it pretty much the same?
Yes, if there's the customizable section with the species listing that Liz talked about, if you found that you need that customized for this coming year, we can customize that. There will be a new link that will be given to you just to keep records separate from year to year. So we would have to do that. And then if there's anybody who needs to be added or removed from the permissions on who gets emails or can pull reports, we would have to fix that. But for the most part, what the kids and the family see is going to be the same. There won't be anything different for them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And then we had a question from Shelby County. How are the champion DUNFs going to be collected? Cindy, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, those will stay the same. So they'll be in like with the test kits and everything. So they'll have to still do the second drug use form and the chain of custody form. So that they will not be able to do those electronically, but that's just done at the time of collection. So their initial one can be electronic, but that final one has to be paper.
Yeah, and we decided on that when we talked about some of the difficulties of some counties having to do the online form, plus that paper copy stays with that test and follows it all the way through. So they can take extra care with that champion form.
Any other questions around that before we move on?
Yeah, this is Bill Clark from Shelby County again.
Mhm.
As the records official, that's, that had to keep track of all this stuff and maintain it. Imagine, so what you're saying is probably the report will be the records document?
Yes.
Okay. And I saw the thing about, you guys were talking about having iPads or something at the stations after the scale. That's kind of fine and good, but who pays for that? And like we do like the other county, and I'm sure a lot of them, because our kids don't know their numbers unless they did a pre-fair check-in. And so we always collect at the time that they're being weighed. So I'll be interested to hear how you guys talk about that as well.
Yep, we're definitely going to cover some of those things to think about, and that's where we really wanted counties to share their experiences and how they managed some of those issues, especially as kids came across the scales. All right. So before we get to pulling reports specifically, I just wanted to share with you guys kind of how it works. So if you guys decide that you want to go with electronic DUNFs, we will require a couple different things from you. So the names of individuals who will be responsible for keeping track of those reports, letting Cindy know when it's okay to pull a final report or sending those reports to her. And so we call those in the survey, they're people we set to collaborate. So for example, we put your emails here and then give you permissions to view reports, copy or distribute the surveys. But this is also where when we look at different email triggers. So for example, we said, if QA has not been completed, this is where we will put your emails in here to trigger an email if a kid hasn't completed DUNF or selected no on completing quality assurance. This is the email that will be sent. Also, if a medication has been used, those that are collaborating on the survey or those emails and names that have been provided will also be notified when a medication has been used and the withdrawal time has not elapsed. And then Cindy also gets a notice on these at the state level so that she can also check in with you guys and make sure that everything's okay. So those are just some of the extra kind of bonuses. So instead of necessarily having to sort through all of those paper records, you guys will get email triggers if any of the youth select no on either of those things. All right. And then if we look at reports, so I'm going to go into a survey that is from a different county. So for example, we use this one here so you guys can kind of see what the report side looks like. So the easiest way to pull a report is going to be just downloading it into an Excel file. Okay. And so basically you'll export the raw data. And usually Excel is just the easier one. And don't worry if you don't catch all of this. If you guys select to have online DUNFs, we can set up a time to meet with you guys to go over pulling reports and different things that you'll need there. So for example, here, oh, because I closed it, it might not be working correctly, sorry. But you'll see columns. Let me share this. And you don't have to save all these, but you'll see the date they started it, their last name, first name, email. And so it'll have all these different answers to questions that you have that we will then use to send those reports to Cindy. This is also a way that you can, if you choose to download that report, you can also then edit that. So if you see corrections, you can find that exhibitor's name in your Excel spreadsheet and change that. Just keep in mind that if you do that, that's the report that needs to go to Cindy if you don't change that in the survey itself. You also can go through online and change their responses. So it's just kind of dependent on what you guys are more comfortable with when it comes to pulling and editing those reports. So when we talked about youth getting their tags at weigh-in, you might be able to have them fill out everything in that form except for the ear tag number that they can put predetermined number. So for example, if your hogs get tagged on the scales and you just want those hog exhibitors to put, NA or 1, 2, 3 until they come across those scales, and then you can go back into that Excel file and match the names and the numbers, the tag numbers with the kids, or you can wait until they go across the scales to have them fill out the DUNF form at all. So just some different options there depending on how much work you guys want to do. So again, the access to the survey will be emails that you guys provide us from county fair personnel, like your junior fair coordinator, or if you have people that sit on the junior fair board that you want on there. No youth, we can't add youth emails to this survey. Only adults can have access to these surveys just because we do have sensitive data on some of these. And then we are going to require this year that an extension educator also be a part of that Qualtrics survey and be able to view those. And mostly that's for ease. Most of our extension educators have seen Qualtrics and know what they're doing in there. So that might help when it comes to pulling reports and things like that. And we just want to keep everybody in the loop. So a couple things to think about when to have youth fill out the forms. Are your animals ID'd before fair? What are your internet capabilities on the fairgrounds? Whether, we talked about some fairs used iPads. Do you have an ability to do it at weigh-in? Do most of your exhibitors have access to smartphones or computers where they can do that as well? And this is really where we want to open it up to discussion. And I would like to start out with, we have some individuals from Delaware, Fairfield, and Portage that were volunteered to share their experiences. So I'm going to open up the floor to them.
I'll go first since Delaware's listed first. I'm Jackie Smith. I'm one of the 4-H educators there. I deal with the livestock. We had a really great experience with the online drug use forms. All of our animals are ID'd before the fair except hogs. So in 2020, we decided not to do the online for hogs and we did the paper copy for them. But in 2021, we will be doing the online forms for hogs, even though they get that tag right before they hit the scales. We're going to have all of our people go through and fill out the form completely and just put a 0 under the animal tag number identifier, whatever that little section is called. And then go back through and manually enter those hogs tag numbers. Our people I gave a date about a week and a half ahead of the fair. So is when they were allowed to start filling them out. we run fair entry as well. So I made special show programs inside that entry software just for the drug use forms. And I pulled those reports. They had the kid's name, the animal's tag number, and their entry number. So as that week and a half dwindled down, I would have those papers and I just kind of highlighted them off as we went to be sure that those kids had turned in their drug use form for the animal. And I trusted the technology that if they actually hit the submit button, then somehow they got through and did all the required fields. We got a lot of duplicates. So we had a lot of kids that maybe have 4 lambs at home, but they're only allowed to bring 2 to the fair. So they went ahead and actually put all 4 lambs in. That way, by the time they actually got to the fair, they knew they were covered. So that was a question I had for Cindy at ODA is if we have extras or duplicates, does it matter? And she said, no, as long as they're filled out correctly. So obviously the system doesn't let them not fill them out correctly. Like I said, really great experience. I only had to run down 4 different families, 6 kids total. And as soon as, I had given those lists of the people who had not filled it out yet to my committees who are checking people in. And right away they pulled out their phone, boom, boom, boom. 2 minutes, they had it done. So it was a really great experience. We're looking forward to it. And I did clean up that Excel file and email it to Cindy once we had everything completed about the 3rd day of fair when I was able to breathe again.
Thanks, Jackie.
Mhm.
Leslie, do you mind going next?
Sure. My name's Leslie Cooksey. I'm one of 2 4-H educators in Fairfield County. We are the last fair in the state, and we went completely online with DUNFs last year. We also have a couple carcass contests that take place prior to fair, and we required them to complete this form. So they were kind of our trial run before we sent out the link to everyone because those events took place prior to fair. So it was a good test run for us as a new option to kind of work through the kinks and the communication piece of it. We sent to the rest of our 4-H and FFA participants the link about a week prior to fair. We encourage them to fill it out as last minute as possible and perhaps on their way into fair to avoid, like Jackie said, some of those extra animals. They can be on there as long as they're drug free and they're filled out correctly, but we tried to keep ours cleaned up with the number of animals we have. So if they had submitted something in error, our instructions were to let us know so that we could delete the record. We asked them to resubmit. At weigh-ins, we asked each of our show committees to have somebody on their show committee as a volunteer check with the family to show proof that the DUNF was done. They could either bring a printed copy of their email or they showed it on their phone. We have some things we need to work through to help with that process because a few of them got missed or they didn't have the tag number exactly right. So there were some things we had to fix that got missed at that point in time. I can see some other ways that we could have junior fair board members assist with that before they get to the scale, if you will, so that they're not slowing down the line of getting through the scale and the weigh-in process. We had probably no more than 3 families per species that I had to run down and either get a DUNF filled out or have them fix something. We usually have tagging events for all of our market animals, with the exception of poultry. Our chickens are not banded until they arrive at fair. So that's one thing, depending on if you have poultry submit, what kind of identification you need them to enter. You may have to give them instruction on NA. We had to enter the chicken leg bands after they submitted, but they're only submitting for 1 pen of chicken. So it was easy to see that each kid had one filled out. We also didn't use Excel reports. We were able to sort the Qualtrics report by species and we ran down through the list to make sure everybody was accounted for. One issue that we had because we didn't have our July weigh-ins like usual is the scrapie tags were used for sheep and goat identification. And Most of you probably are aware that most don't know how to put that complete scrapie number down as identification. So there were some scrapie tag numbers we had to track down to make sure we had the full number. The other checks and balances that we did is after we got through weigh-in with each species, I went to the senior fair office. They have all of our entry information. I asked them to run a report of all of the market entries that they had weigh in. So we knew the actual animals that were on site, not just the ones that were tagged in or identified earlier in the year. And we cross-referenced that list with what was entered in on the DUNF form. If we were able to edit it, and usually the only edits we were making were to fix or confirm tag numbers. If we saw a bigger problem, we had them resubmit and we deleted the previous one. I think in a normal fair year, it would go much smoother. Some of our species were on the fairgrounds for less than 48 hours. So that gave us a lot less time to track families down, and it put it kind of on us to track them down more quickly. Sometimes it was in the middle of their show, which is not very convenient, but we tried to get it done before the end of their show day so that we knew the families were still on the grounds and we had the information that we needed. So we did have one family that mistakenly filled out the form as far as their animal not being drug-free. That process is expedited quickly, and the fair board got a phone call that we had to check on that situation pretty quickly. And it turns out that they submitted it in error. I went and found the family. We talked to Cindy. We deleted the old DUNF form and they resubmitted a correct form. So I think that pretty much sums up.
Yeah, and Portage is basically a lot of the same things that Leslie just talked about as well. We absolutely loved it. We honestly, after doing paper copies for, I know I've been working with in different capacities over the last plus 10 years, this was the best experience I think I've ever done, honestly. Not having to go through each one of those papers, making sure they're correct, then pulling all 3 copies and getting them to the right places. It cut down on so much time because, quite honestly, I was able to pull those reports in an Excel spreadsheet, sort them based on the species, give them to the committees, and then the committees definitely helped me track them down, make sure everything was correct. So I will say it definitely, like Leslie said, it was an expedited process, and it was honestly just a lot easier. So I really did appreciate doing the online version. We also did it at fair. One of the biggest mistakes I made, just because 2020 was so crazy, is I sent it out about a week before fair 2. Well, none of our animals were tagged until they got to fair. So realized quickly that that was not the best thing. So I probably, in hindsight, should have not sent that out and we should have just set it up at fair because that's what we ended up doing anyway. Basically, when each animal came to tag in, that was just part of their tag in process. So they would come, tag in, weigh in, whatever they would do, go put their animal in the cage, and then they'd come back and then they'd finish filling out their DUNF form. We did not have iPads or anything extra. We just made the kids use their iPhones, and that worked out really well for us. Most of our committees, they bring like their own laptop as well. So that was an option for maybe families that didn't have it. But it was pretty easy, pretty smooth process, and we were able to do that pretty well. And I think that's pretty much all I have to, but we loved the process. So thank you.
I would add too, for those fair board members that are on the call, Qualtrics is a very phone or smartphone user-friendly type program. So the way that it looks on the phone is exactly the way it looks on the computer, and it reformats, so it's very straightforward. Most having smartphones are able to do it on the spot, and it takes very little time. I would say the bulk of our DUNF forms probably came in as they were on their way to the fairgrounds with the actual animals on the trailer, and they knew which animals were coming with them. So I think sending the link out too far in advance leaves room for having to fix things, correct things, because they might change their mind on which animals they're bringing, or they give you the wrong information. A a lot of indecisiveness perhaps. So just some suggestions on that.
I will add as well, like we could not have done we could not have done it as easy as if I didn't reach out to Michael and have him update our species, just get them into the exact order what our fair does. Each fair is a little different. That was a huge help for us.
And then Amanda Rains in Hardin County. Amanda, I saw you comment in the chat. Would you comment a little bit about iPad use and some of the things that you guys did at weigh-in?
So this is Tori in Hardin County. Amanda kept getting kicked off, so I jumped on for her. We did utilize the iPads. Most of our buildings do have Wi-Fi capabilities, so it worked out really well with us only having our animals on the grounds for one day. We had everyone complete the DUNF basically when they got on the grounds before they started to weigh in. We had one or two extension professionals there to help guide and answer their questions with the iPads, but we also had an 8.5 by 11 sheet with instructions and a QR code with a Go link to make it simple for navigation, whether they utilize the iPads or their smartphone. So with them utilizing the iPads, we were able to answer any questions right then and there. So their DUNF was done before they got to the scale. And then that worked really well because when Amanda and I double checked everything, any questions that we had, we were able to track down the individuals if they did them on their phones or if something got missed. We were able to track them down to be sure that everything was good to go. But it worked out well having the iPads, just especially if somebody had a question and didn't know what identification they needed to have or whichever, because our hogs got tagged after most of the people had their DUNFs done. So overall, that went well, especially having the iPad since we had so many there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then to Leslie's point as well with Qualtrics being very mobile friendly, I apologize. I didn't realize I didn't have the mobile view on as we went through. So you can see on this right-hand side that this is what on the left you see what's on a computer, and on the right you see what's on the smartphone. So they can go, right through the survey just like you could on a computer, and at the end they can just click that link and it'll just restart the survey for them. Does anyone have any questions? I want to keep those counties that are willing to reply as well, because the counties are the ones that were on the ground doing this, and so they're going to have even better advice than I will when it comes to making these successful. So for fairs that are considering online DUNFs, feel free to ask some questions. I know we had some in the chat. Judy Villard, so extension educators will get an email when the report is ready or complete. No. So the report, we wait for fairs or educators to let us know when the report is either ready to be pulled or they send to us. You can definitely ask that you be copied on that report, but as long as you have access to that Qualtrics survey, you're going to have access to that to be able to pull those reports.
Yeah, and when we're talking about pulling reports and sending reports in to ODA, Cindy has access to all of the reports at all times. So one of the nice things about the online DUNF is that we can pull that report, or she can pull that report, and there really doesn't have to be the emailing or the mailing of the paper copies back and forth. You literally just let us know, hey, we've got everything done, and then we can download that report, or Cindy will pull that report right out of Qualtrics and keep it in her records. So that report question of, how does she get it? She already has it. The same time you have it, she can get it, and the rest of us can as well.
Biggest thing to remember on that is if you choose to download like an Excel file and you're editing that and not the Qualtrics survey online, then the Qualtrics survey that Cindy can pull won't be accurate, and you'll need to send her that Excel file. But again, sending her an email with an Excel file a lot easier than managing all 3 of those copies and making sure they get to the right people.
Yeah, and there was a comment in the chat box about how much information can be edited on these forms. So educators that have used Qualtrics know that that as educators we're able to edit responses within the Qualtrics surveys. The editing should be kept to a minimum. You definitely don't want to go in and change the whole thing because someone made a mistake. If they made a mistake on the whole form and didn't fill it out at all correct, then it should be their responsibility to fix it. The nice part about this is it's very difficult to make an error on this form. I don't know really if there were many changes that I had to make in Paulding County with our DUNF forms, and didn't hear very many that anyone had to make. Right now, the 4-H educators are who would have access to be able to make those edits because they have the most involvement with Qualtrics and have the most knowledge and understanding of it. Definitely wouldn't do any edits within the Qualtrics system itself if there were medications and the dosage, that type of stuff that should be taken care of by the exhibitor.
I would say the only edits that we made in Fairfield were small transposed numbers that were pretty obvious, or they left off a digit or so from a scrapey tag that we also had like on a market weigh-in report. If there were any other issues, we made them resubmit because we weren't sure how the species information, the sex of the animal, the description of the animal affected the tag number changing. So we didn't want to just change the tag number because those other things could be changed too. So that was the only edits we really made in our county.
And I will say from Portage, at first I wasn't sure at all. So anything that was messed up whatsoever, we made them resubmit. And about halfway through that process, I think I reached out to Michael and I was like, is there a way to edit it? Because this would just be so much easier if it was just that simple editing. And thankfully he helped me. And that was a lot easier because like Leslie said, there was just a couple that they put like one number wrong or something silly. And I hated for them to have to keep going back and redoing that. So I did do basic ones like that. But yeah, if it was like 2 more things, I typically just had them do it again just to make sure.
Another question we had for independent fairs that don't have an extension educator involved, what do they do? Mike and I are also on these surveys, so we can work with you individually to make sure that you have what you need. So you won't be penalized for not necessarily having an extension educator associated with your fair. And then Judy, Cindy, this might be your preference for this question. They were wondering if they have to do 100% online or 100% paper, or do they have the option of a stepped process where they encourage it online, but also have paper as an option?
I would prefer one way or the other, but at the same time, less paper is fine for me. So, you know, if they're still trying to work through the process, like with some of those hogs and stuff that aren't ID'd ahead of time, as much as you can do electronic, I'm all for it because I still have paper forms sitting in my house that I haven't even looked at yet. So, you know, if you have to do one species for now, but just, you know, I think ultimately we need to try to find a way for those to be electronic, you know, down the road. So just kind of changing how you do things or finding a better way to do it. So, but again, I mean, I'd prefer one way or the other, but as long as they get done and they're right, I'm cool with it.
Easy pleaser, that's what Cindy is.
Yes, I am, sometimes.
Another question from Shelby County. How did you verify that all the required DUNF forms are collected and match up with animals on the grounds? So I'll defer to some of our counties and some of their methods for that.
We have a report that I asked for from the senior fair office after they entered all of the weights in from weigh-ins. And so it was a complete list of every animal in that, and it was done and requested by species so that I could compare that. In Qualtrics, you can sort your list by species so that you can run down that list and cross-check it. And that after we got through that point in time, that's where I knew which families I had to track down and either confirm a tag number So we had to fix it one place or the other, or if by some chance they were missed altogether at weigh-in and didn't show proof that their DUNF was done, then I stood there with them in their barn and as they did it on their phone to make sure it was completed. In our case in Fairfield County, we have extension staff that man the junior fair office. So one of my staff was actually helping to go through that, comparing the lists while I was running around, making sure they got completed. And then I would call her to make sure it was received on the report side. But the family should have it then as an email receipt as soon as they hit submit. That way you can make sure they worked all the way through the process and it was finished.
And in Portage, I know I pulled a report for each one of my committees as well. It worked out really well, just getting rid of all the information other than their name, their phone number. Let me see what else I had. I think I had their ID number and maybe one other thing. But I did that for each one of our species and I gave it to them right after tag-in. And before their show, obviously we tried to get it done before the show, made them go through and verify with their records to make sure that they were accurate.
So I would say probably 90% of Delaware's came in before the fair. And I had pulled from our entry software, I had pulled the kid's name, the tag number, and their entry number in case I needed to go in and edit that entry. So as they came into Qualtrics, kind of like Leslie, I sorted by species and I had, I don't know, 10 different clipboards. So I would go through the sheep clipboard, check the sheep kids off, and I would highlight them as they go. And then I knew by the time we got to fair that, oh, there's 3 kids not highlighted. I better go get Aubrey. She hasn't done her form yet.
And then Christy in Brown County commented on their experience. Christy, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can do that. What I did was I had them fill them out pre-fair, which all of our animals were tagged pre-fair, and our hogs do get an extra slap tattoo when they come across. The only thing we had to add in was our poultry PIN numbers. So we had them fill them out in advance. Poultry just put NA, and we went back in and added the PIN number on the Excel spreadsheet. But what I did was I did species reports and gave those to each of the superintendents, deleting out most of, if they didn't need the information, they didn't have it. And then they had a junior fair board kid and they would stop at the kid first and they would say, okay, this is tag 333. And they would mark it off and let the animal go across the scale. And if they're like, oh, this is tag 22, oh, we don't have a DUNF for you. They made them step aside, fill out the DUNF, and then let them go across the scale. And they had to show them on their phone the submission confirmation.
Awesome. Another comment that we got in the chat, of the fairs who have done online forms, how many forms does each fair turn in a normal year? And before I open that up to our counties, I just quickly looked through our submissions on the Qualtrics side since I can see those. And we had anywhere from 200 to 2,000 submissions for Qualtrics surveys for the fairs that did that. I know Hartford was one of our larger ones. So if counties want to chat about that, and because I know that was a concern with, with the sheer numbers, how easy is this to work reports and things like that?
We had over 750 forms turned in, but we also cleaned ours up and we didn't have any backup animals or animals that were still tagged at home included on our list.
In a normal year, we would have between 400 and 425 paper copies. And I'm sure we were well over that by the time we had our extra animals on there this year.
And then to clarify, rabbits and feeders are the only ones not required by ODA to send in the DUNFs, correct? Cindy, I'll defer to you on that one.
Sorry. Yes, that is correct. The rabbits and feeders, we still don't need. That being said, since if they do them electronically, it's not quite as traumatizing to me. So, if you want them done, go electronic and then they'll still all be in the same spot and I still don't have to go through them. So.
I know there are several counties that have species outside of what's required by ODA fill these out for their fair records. Mike and Paulding, I think you've got some as well. If counties have used those, if you could talk about that a little bit, and the ease of
Yeah.
using electronic.
Yeah, in Paulding County, we require all animals on the fairgrounds to complete the DUNF form. That way, if the vet has any questions about any of the animals, they have the record of whether or not any animal on the fairgrounds been medicated. It didn't seem to cause any issues with having to go through extra forms. The nice part about this is when there is an issue with the medications or something that you would have had to catch looking over the paper forms, it sends the email to the people who are selected to receive the emails to let them know that there is a medication that needs to be looked into. So it didn't cause any problems or any extra work as far as having to go through all of those in Paulding County.
Awesome. I think I've caught up with the chat. Are there any other fairs out there with questions that our counties or we can help answer as it comes to online DNFs? Man, you guys are good. All right. Well, go ahead.
I do have a question. So Cindy, we have maybe gobs of forms sitting on our shelves. So I'm sure that if we decide to go this way, which I hope that I convinced the county to do this, I'm sure there's counties that would love them. When do you want them back by, or do you have a goal that you usually try to distribute forms? Do you have that deadline?
I think we try to get them out. Well, obviously the past year was a nightmare, but we tried like May, June. Some people want them sooner. Some of them don't want them till right before the fair. It just kind of depends. So, I mean, how many do you guys, because I can send one of our people there to the office to pick them up while they're out running around to get them back in here. I mean, they're in here every now and again if we want to do it that way. If you guys just want to let me know, we can set something up.
I'll just have to let you know at this point.
That's fine.
We have a question in the chat. Is there going to be an opportunity to build the rectopamine freeform in Qualtrics? Funny you should ask that. We were just chatting about that. So Clark County actually came up with, Patty House in Clark County came up with an online rectopamine freeform last year that we're going to be able to utilize for the counties. So county fairs or educators just have to let us know and we will work with you on getting that customized for your county. Luckily, a lot less customization for that form than some of this, but that is going to be an option for this year if you want to use that electronically.
For counties that have used iPads to help ease this process, was that an OCIO request, and how long in advance do you need to have that? How quick is the turnaround to getting iPads?
Counties
They
that
can't. So iPads can be requested through OCIO. They usually ask for at least a month ahead of time to schedule those to be distributed. They have iPads and laptops that are able to be borrowed. What I know, there are a number of counties across the state that have iPads within their offices that could be borrowed for things like this. So you could talk to OCIO or talk to a neighboring county that you know has iPads available to set up a time where you could borrow them for your check-ins.
Lydia, we have 2 iPads in the office from Tech Change Makers, I think, and we had them both there just in case, and not a single soul ever used it. They just got on their phone and did it because it's really that easy.
Okay, thank you guys.
Any more questions on DUNFs? Up on the screen, I've got Cindy, myself, and Mike's contact information. I think we might have one more. question, and Cindy, you might be able to help us out with this. If the online DUNFs are completed prior to fair and then they're signed prior and not the date that the animals come on the grounds, is that going to cause a problem? Their understanding was that they were to be signed the day the animals came on the grounds, and they were, by signing it, stating the animal was clear of medication on that date.
No, I mean, because it's not going to be really any different than if they sign it when they get on the ground. As long as it hasn't been given anything, I'm fine with that. I think even now I've seen kids fill it because some counties give them out so far in advance that they're not necessarily dated for the day they go. So as long as they're still drug free, that's fine, because ultimately when we do the testing, we're going to have them fill out new forms and it's going to be based on that. And as far as if I see like a medication or something and I think there's a problem, I'm seeing all those ahead of time to make sure that the information on there is correct before they even show the animal. That's how fast it is. So it's kind of nice.
All right. I think if there aren't any more questions, I don't mean to keep you guys forever. Thanks, a big thanks again to Cindy and Mike and the counties that agreed to talk about their experiences. That's, I know, super helpful to counties that are thinking about it. If you guys could do me a favor, if you are interested in doing online DUNFs this year, if you could put your name, your county, and your email address in the chat so that we can reach out to you as a group to set up some times to talk about things, that would be really helpful to us. So again, just put those in the chat and I'll record those. We do, I think, have another question. If these online DUNFs are completed prior to fair and then they're signed, oops, sorry, I'm reading the same one again. Here we go. If online DUNFs are online, how will a county double check for correctness before submission? I believe a county gets awarded in the past for the least amount of mistakes. So as kids submit their DUNFs, you as a county have access to that, to pull reports and to access those answers to double check to make sure things are correct. But again, as Mike said before, we've made it very difficult to mess these forms up, I guess. So, the answers are required. So hopefully you're not going to be missing information. Some of the biggest things counties have seen are just tag numbers that were recorded wrong or transposed numbers, and potential, kids selecting they didn't complete quality assurance, which again, you guys would get notified, or having a drug residue, which again, you guys would get notified on that.
Can I add one thing, Liz?
Mhm.
I think the best thing that any one of you can do if you did not do this last year is to set up a time with Liz or Michael to go through the reports, especially if you're not familiar with Qualtrics, because it will help you a great bit when it comes to managing that data when you're busy with Fair Week. So make sure you plan to do that prior to sending your link out to everyone in your county.
I have a question. This is Bill Clark from Shelby County.
Mhm.
We're talking about the data. Where is the data downloadable from? Where?
Qualtrics itself.
Okay,
Sorry,
so,
we're just gonna.
so it's
I'm
just
gonna-
all web-based then.
Yes, everything's web-based. So again, I'm gonna just share my screen real quick. Share here, and I'm just gonna pick on somebody's from last year. So when you're, and these are the things that we can go over with you. If, whether you're a fair that doesn't have an extension educator, if your extension educator isn't as comfortable with it, we're very happy to sit down and chat with you guys about how to pull reports. So when you're looking at reports, this is kind of what you're going to see. So it'll populate with the answers that you get, which can look a little overwhelming on this. But all you have to do is export basically raw data, and you can choose how you want to export that, which kind of file you use, and then you can download it that way, or you can look at this data on Qualtrics and edit it on Qualtrics itself.
Okay, yeah, because I would probably just download it as raw data and then just manipulate it as needed.
Yeah, and that's fine. And so the only thing again to think about when you do that is that most updated report or Excel file that you're keeping on your computer is what will need to be sent to Cindy so that we don't pull an outdated report from Qualtrics for her official records.
Oh, so if you go in and edit, like if I would go in and edit, do I edit the downloaded file or do I have them go into this Qualtrics or whatever you call it and do it there?
You can choose. It's fairly easy to edit things within Qualtrics itself, where we can kind of just click on the data and change things. Again, if there's a lot of things that need changed, we generally advise you to just have them submit a new one. You can go in and delete old records when they resubmit. If you're comfortable, Cindy said she doesn't have a preference on that. So because she can see the date of the most recent submission, she'll know which one she's supposed to look at. So again, it's up to you. Some counties chose to download it in an Excel file after everybody had submitted their DUNFs and change it within Excel because they were more comfortable with that. And that's okay too. We just will need that Excel spreadsheet instead of downloading from Qualtrics. So for example, here we have, sorry, my computer's a little slow. We have these answers and we are able to edit these responses potentially depending on how much needs changed.
So I guess my question is, why do I need to send a file if Cindy has access to this information already?
You don't, as long as the most current changes are within Qualtrics. But if you export an Excel file to your computer, save it and edit it, we won't have access to that because it's on your personal computer.
I understand that. So then the whole records retention stuff that we have to keep no longer becomes an issue?
We keep it within Qualtrics. So that's why you guys will be getting, for fairs that used it last year, you'll be getting new links to new Qualtrics surveys this year because we're required to keep this for a year. So
Okay.
that data will stay in Qualtrics for a year.
But then we still maintain the champion paperwork for the champion.
Correct. Yep. Cindy talked
Okay.
about that a little earlier.
I'm fine. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks. Those are good questions.
Liz, you kind of talked about it earlier, but like, what is a reasonable time that we can say, hey guys, I'm ready for you to pull it off of Qualtrics, or when how far after our fair or during our fair do I need to email that document to Cindy?
Cindy, you have a preference on that?
So technically it's no different than the paper copies. I mean, if you look at the rule, what the rule actually says, they have to complete the form before they even show the animal. So they need to be, everything needs to be checked again before the show. Should be faster doing it this way. So just in the fact that you're just downloading a report and emailing it to me, it shouldn't take too long, but everything still needs to be looked at before the show to make sure everybody's good to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We've got another question in the chat. Sorry, and if you've typed a question in the chat and I haven't said it yet, I'm getting a lot of names and emails, so I apologize if I have missed something. Dark County wanted to know, how do you know if you have a form for every animal without verbally asking every exhibitor? So I'll defer to some counties on that one.
So oh, sorry,
go ahead, Jackie. Go ahead.
We checked off that tag number, as they came into the barn or as they went across the scales, however you guys do it at your place. We checked off that tag number with that kid. So that's how we 100% knew that it was turned in.
For us, I think most were prepared to, in a normal year, present a paper DUNF at weigh-in. So when we asked them to show a paper receipt or the email receipt that they received on their phone, they were prepared to do that. And like I had mentioned earlier, I think if we work with our junior fair board members to do that a little earlier in the line before they're, one or two animals before getting on the scale, it will help with the process. And I think we'll have a lot more of the kinks worked out, because even if they somehow missed having it done, the junior fair board members could make sure they had the link there, and hopefully they could do it within their vehicle and finish it. And as I also said earlier, the double check for us was pulling the fair entries of the actual animals that were weighed in as a double check prior to the day they showed.
And Liz, if I could add, at Hartford, what we did was we had all of the drug use notification forms submitted before they arrived to the fair. It was only an issue for hogs, and we'll fix that this year. But what we did was we cross-referenced the drug use notification list against the exhibitor entry list, and then went back and double-checked any missing ones that were still not accounted for as soon as they had crossed the scales, by double checking our entry database to see if they had weighed an animal in. So we would either know we had a scratch or we had an animal to track down. And that worked out very well in the fact that pretty much like 98% of the ones that we did not have a form checked off for were scratches that never crossed the scales. With our hogs last year, they don't get tagged until the fair, but we were afraid to wait until they got on the grounds to have them do the forms because it was electronic and it was the first time. But it worked. But what we'll be doing this year is they get their tags on Saturday night after they arrive, and they weigh on Sunday morning. And so we're going to have it set up such that we have QR codes posted in the barn and ask them to complete their drug use notification form between Saturday evening at like 6 o'clock when they start tagging and Sunday morning at 8 o'clock when they start weighing. So that's a change that we've made, but it worked seamlessly for us with all of our species. And it was super helpful to have, I think somebody else mentioned, but to have Michael's help in specially designing the drug use certification form species section, because we do collect drug use certification forms for a few species that are not required, including that's how we track our horse medications. And so it was super helpful to be able to make it somewhat tailored to Hartford so that they answered the questions that we really needed.
Thanks, Lisa. Any other questions on that? Remember, if I can get your name, your county, and your email, I'm not going to be able to contact you if I don't have your email in there. That would be super helpful for us. Even if you aren't sure that you're going to use it, but you're interested, that way we can keep you in the loop with all of our contact information. We greatly appreciate it. But again, we'll stick around for a minute if there are more questions. But otherwise, thanks again, guys, for joining. We greatly appreciate your interest, and so does Cindy.